My name is Casey Germadnik. I am a Senior Professional Development Specialist for Smart Technologies, and I am based out of Texas, as Sarah said. So I'm joining you from my home office today, which is pretty exciting, and I'm glad to be hanging out with you for the next 30 or so minutes to talk about how we can leverage this IQ, Smart IQ, from our Smart IFP. So a little bit about me really quickly before we get going. I am from the classroom. I worked for 20 years and as an educator. Before starting this job, I taught K-5 general education, and the last 11 years as a gifted and talented specialist, and got to work with K-5 and pull out. We had a pull out situation where I could have a different grade level each day, which was really exciting and lots of fun. So as I mentioned, I'm excited to be here with you guys today. And one of the things I want to point out is I'm here to support you guys beyond today. So I know this is a quick 30 minutes of what we can do with our board itself, whether we're in blended, whether we're back in our classrooms with our students, whether we're remote learning, whether we're doing some kind of combination or even a hybrid situation. We're going to talk about how to leverage these boards. But please reach out and email me with any questions that you might have of things today that we talk about today, or if you want to review anything, I'm here to support you in any way possible. Sarah will add my email to the chat. You can also follow me at KCG316 on Twitter. I love learning and discovering different things that educators are doing in their classrooms. I love to continue learning. So I hope that we can stay connected beyond today as well. All right, so our goal for today is to really think about how the Smart IFP, so your Smart Interactive Flat Panel, how can it, that has IQ, how can it transform teaching and learning for our students? So there's a lot of amazing elements with our board today. I'm going to highlight a couple of things today, but we're not going to get into everything because there's lots of details. We really want to focus you in on a few things that you might not be aware of or might not have thought about using with your kids in your learning environment right now. All right, so I am going to get back to my home screen. On a Smart Flat Panel, in order for me to get to my home screen, I have to hit a home button. Now, depending on what kind of board you have, your button might look a little bit different. Some of you might have a little button on the side that has a house on it, and that could be your home button. For me, I have a white line right at the bottom. You can see there's a black bar and a white little dash. That's my home button. Some of you might have a home button that's between two pens that you have. So there's a variety of ways that we hit home. At this point, I'm going to hit my home button. And when I do, it's going to take you to my home screen. So the way I think about that is kind of like an iPad, right? So if I have my iPad, and if I'm reading, say, my Kindle app on my iPad, and let's say my high schooler texts me and says, "Mom, can you please put money in my account? I'm so hungry, I'm going to die," which is a true story. She does it all the time. In order for me to put money in her account, I have to leave the Kindle app, right? I have to close that app. So I have to hit my home button first so that I can get to my new app. That's the same way we want to think about our board here is I have to hit the home button to get to my home screen so that I have some other options of places that I can go and things that I can do. So there's a variety of buttons and little tabs that we have here. As I said, we're not going to go over every detail of the board. We're going to focus in on a couple. One of the things I want you to notice is that there's a favorite section. If you look in the center of my home screen, you'll see a word that says favorite, and underneath there are 3 applications. You see a whiteboard space, you see a browser, and you see something called player. So browser is just that. Browser allows me to go to a web browser, go to my Google Drive, go to my Office 365 account, access websites I like to use with my students, any of those typical tools I might use with using a web browser on my regular computer. I can also use it leveraging what we call IQ, which I think of as kind of a mini computer on your board. So I have no computer connected to my board. I'm just leveraging the board itself. The other thing we have is Player, and Player allows me to play some smart notebook files that I have or some lessons that I have. I can play them for my students and have them participate actively with them by going to that Player app. Where we're going to spend a good part of our time today is discovering what's behind the whiteboard space. So this first top button above the browser and Player are whiteboard space. Our whiteboard space is very different than our traditional whiteboard space that you might be familiar with or used to using in your classroom. So when I touch my whiteboard space, it's going to open for me a new whiteboard. And you'll notice something that's a little bit different in this space than our traditional whiteboard space. Mine's loading, give it a second. I think my internet might be tired right now. We'll give it a second. If not, I'll hit a whiteboard space again. Let's see, still loading. Let me try one more time. And see if we can get it going. When my whiteboard space comes on, I have a variety of tools that I have access to that are very different than tools that I have on my traditional whiteboard space. You'll see on my left side, I have a variety of tools that I can pull from and use with my students. Let's see, we're really being stubborn right now. Let's see if my one that I had open previously wants to load. It's thinking about it.
All
so
right,
going down on, yes?
Oh, I'll just say, we had a question in the chat about where we would find IQ. So if you do have a smart interactive flat panel, your smart IQ is one of the options when you are looking at the inputs in your board. So it's built into the board. So when you turn it on, you're able to go to your smart IQ. And I don't know if Casey, you want to elaborate on that a little bit as well.
Yes, I'm going to try, hold on 1 second. Let's try one more. See if I can get our whiteboard space to open in general. So yes, IQ is something that you have that can be built into the board. It's not something that it kind of comes with it. You don't have to add it or connect with it. As soon as you turn on your computer or turn on your board, sorry, it starts and it's ready to go. And I don't have to do anything to get it going or get it moving and grooving. Although right now mine's being a little bit stubborn. Let's see. You may have to do a quick reset, or I'm going to try and do. See, it looks like they should be. We're going to load this and see if it will. We'll kind of use this space because I know it was working earlier, and we'll hopefully get it going. So with our whiteboard, as I'm waiting to see if this will load, you'll look at the left side of our toolbar and we see a variety of options here. Number one is our pen tool. So one of the great things about this whiteboard space is instead of having to use or leverage expo markers, I have the ability to pick up my pen and begin writing right away, or I can change my color and I have a variety of color options to choose from, which is really nice. Okay, now it looks like we're moving, so that's good. Oh, maybe. We're really getting stubborn right now. So I can change my pen color. I have a color wheel that I can choose from, and I can change it to any color I want. You'll never run out of expo markers or anything along those lines. Underneath my pen, going on my left side, I also will have a little square that has dotted lines around it. That allows me to connect and group text and move it in one space or at one time as well. And then underneath that, we'll see an image of a mountain where we can add some additional content like images and videos that I'll walk you through, hopefully, in just a moment. And then we have a surprise button that's relatively new, that's really exciting, that allows us to add some interactive widgets and things like that too. All right, guys, I don't know what is happening with my board right now, but I'm going to give it a chance to think for a second. And I'm going to try signing out of my board and signing back in really quickly. So while we're here, one of the things that you'll notice that's different about our board is you now have an icon in the top left corner. That icon allows us to sign into our board or sign out of our board. Being able to sign into our board is really great because it will remember and it'll attach any content that I make to my Smart account. So if I were to go to a different classroom and sign into a different board, I'd be bringing my lessons with me, which is really critical at this time. So I'm going to sign out, and let's see if signing back in will help us get going again as well. So signing out again, it allows you to close this out. So now if you had a substitute or if you had someone else in your room using your board, they would be able to access all of the public content, but not any of your personal content or that you did with your students that you have saved under your account. And then again, if you're a teacher that's having to travel, you would be able to travel from one space to another space as well. All right. And give me just a second while I get signed in. Sarah, is there anything you want to add on or talk about while I'm getting us all back into the lesson?
Yeah, a couple of questions are kind of popping up in the chat right now. And if you can see right here now that we have a nice big view here of Casey at her board, you can see that there was a question of what series board this is. This is a 6000 series that Casey is using. So yours may be a little bit different than this board. You might have a little bit of different buttons, things like that. So it might look just slightly different. But this is the flat panel does have the touch screen, as Casey is modeling for us right now, where she is able to use her finger to touch on the board and select. And she does not, again, have that connected computer as she's using her smartboard with IQ. So these are all some great questions that are coming in.
Okay, so one of the other things that we have on our board now is the Zoom app, which is what I'm using right now. And this allows me to share and connect with my students, share my work with my students. I can share my board right from here. So I'm going to hit share. And hopefully this will pull us back in. And I'm hoping that we'll have everything up and working.
Yep. And one more question that just came in, which is a great question about, is Casey right now, is she using Smart Notebook? Is she using Smart Learning Suite? And she is able to use she's able just to use her board, and she is tapping on the whiteboard right there, as we can see under favorites. So she's going to tap on the whiteboard to pull up her lesson. If you are a Smart Learning Suite user, you can also use your Smart Learning Suite files on the board as well.
All right, so hopefully we'll get loaded and connected. There we go. All right, we have success. I just need to sign out and sign back in. That's the regular way, right? Refresh, sign out, sign back in. Okay, so here we are in my whiteboard space. One of the things you'll notice is look at the bottom of the whiteboard space. You'll see that you have some circles. These allow me to touch and change the background. So if I want to have notebook paper to mimic for my students, I can do that. I can have that notebook paper so I can model what my students would do on their page. If I need graph paper or grid paper, I could pull that in. If I want to do some dots, they're right here for me to pull in. Or I can even do, and I'm going to do for today, a chalkboard background. So I can quickly and easily adjust my whiteboard space to be a different background, and I can change it as many times as I want as well. So now, if you look again on my left side of my board, I have these different tools, and we talked about them briefly while I was trying to get my board up and running. And one of the tools is this pen tool. So now when I touch this pen tool, you're going to notice that it pops out with several different color choices, but there's 3 dots in the bottom right corner. And if I touch that, I have a whole circle color wheel that I can pull from. So I can use any color I want to choose from. You never have to worry about those pesky Expo markers dying on you. I'm going to choose yellow, and I can also change the thickness by right above my colors. You'll see 3 different options for color thickness. I'm going to choose the thickest for right now. So today I'm going to think about what I might use this for with my students. So one thing I might do is I might have my students start thinking about a concept we're going to discuss. So maybe I want my students to think about the word grit. Think about the word grit. So if I'm working with my students in my classroom, I can say, hey guys, what are some words or some things that come to mind when you think of the word grit? But right now, not all of us are having our students in our classroom, and we're using video conferencing like this as well. So the other thing I can do is I can say, hey guys, I want you to throw some ideas in the chat. Tell me what comes to mind when you think of the word grit. So right now, just put some ideas in the chat, and I'm gonna just designate one person to be off mute as my student to share some of the responses. So Sarah, as ideas come in, I'd love for you to share some of them, and I'm gonna add them to the board. So what are some things that come to mind when you think of the word grit?
Right. Oh, some great words are popping in, like strong, persistent.
Oh, I love persistent. What else?
Strength. Tenacity. That's a great word.
Oh, that's a SAT word. And you're making me spell it, right? So you'll notice that I can designate a student to be my reporter, right? And tell me the words to write that they're seeing in the chat. If I was in the classroom, I could have one student be my reporter, and then we could call on students to share their ideas as well. Something else we can do, and we're not going to get into it right here, but I do have, if you have a smart account, a Smart Learning Suite account, I can also share this activity with my students, and I can allow my students to use their devices to add their own words here. So it doesn't have to be me just recording them, but I really wanted you guys to see that this is something that we can do in the blended learning environment, whether your kids are at home or whether they're at school, or a combination of the two. Now, something else that I can do is not all students just think verbally, right? It's really good for our students to have multiple modalities, so seeing images and text together. So one of the tools that we have going down our left side, we have our pen tool, and right underneath there, we have the ability to move items around. And then underneath there, I have my plus button with a mountain. When I click on that, I can search for online content. So let's say I want to think of something that comes to mind when a visual that comes to mind when I think of grit. One thing I think about is mountain climbing, because I think that's a lot of determination, that's a lot of tenacity, all of those different words that you chose. So I've typed the word mountain climbing, and now I'm going to hit on the keyboard my magnifying glass, and it's going to find some images for me. So I can look and see what is an image. Ooh, I see this guy kind of rappelling off the side of a mountain. I don't even know if he has anything to protect him or keep him in place. So I'm going to choose that picture. So I'm just going to touch it, and it will throw it on my screen just like so. I can now touch it, and I have a blue circle in the corner that I can use to resize. And I can use this to move and add to my work as well. So we can use text and images to help our students to think about this concept in a variety of ways. What are some other ways you like to use the text and the images with your students, Sarah?
Oh, definitely. To help my students with a variety of different learning needs, we like to be able to provide them with those visuals for students that really make those connections.
Absolutely. So again, I could leverage student devices and have them join, but I can also do it in this situation where we're having that conversation, whether it's through our chat and our video conferencing, or if we had some students in person as well. So one of the things that's kind of frustrating with the traditional whiteboard space is when I start to run out of room, there's not a lot I can do. I'm out of room. I have to erase it so I can have more access. With this whiteboard space, there's two things I want to point out. One is if I touch and start to move, I am only looking at one small piece of my overall space. I'm looking at like 1/9 of my board space. So I can always move things around so I can get additional space. But the other thing that I used to love about charts is that I could pull that chart paper over and have another chart paper right behind it. Well, with our whiteboard, we can do that as well. So if you look on the right side, the left side over here on my toolbar again, right above the arrow. So if you look down in the bottom corner, you'll see an up arrow. Right above that is a plus sign. When I click that plus sign, I am able to go and get another blank page. Look in the top left corner, it says blank page with the green pen. I can touch that, and now I have another page that I can use. I can, again, if I wanted to, change the background. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it white for this part of the task. So we talked about earlier on our left side, that little mountain plus sign where we could pull in online content. one of my favorite things is that we can pull in images, but we can also pull in YouTube videos that have no ads, no comments. So if I click on that same mountain, so if I look down my left side, I'm going to look for that plus button with the mountain, and I'm going to add it. Notice right now I have images and I have mountain climbing still. I'm going to change my search. So I'm going to touch in that top search bar area, and that will bring up my keyboard so that I can delete that. And I am going to look for a video I like to do with my students when we talk about grit. So right now I'm looking at images connected to my search mind shift. I'm going to toggle over to videos. So right now image is blue. I'm going to touch videos, and now videos will be blue, and it will pull on some videos that I can choose from. So I know this first video in the left corner is the one I want to use, so I'm going to touch it. Let's see. There it goes. And it's going to go right on my screen. Now you'll notice when you're looking at my shared screen, it looks kind of small right now, and there's a lot of white space around here. What I really love is I can leverage that white space. We can write all over it. So I can have my students, I can ask them, hey, what do you think about mind shift? What does making a mind shift mean? What are some times you've had a mind shift? I want you to throw in the chat a time your mind has made a shift, or what mind shift means to you, or a connection you have to mind shift. And Sarah, if you will share some of the ideas that are coming in, I would love it.
All right, so we're checking in the chat here to see if we have any great ideas about a mind shift. Even seeing maybe trying some of these new tools or new ideas that Casey's showing us. Right now, if I see maybe a new idea, I might have a little mind shift of how I can use that. All right. Switching to virtual learning, right? That's probably the biggest mind shift that we've had recently.
Well, and many of us are having to go back and forth, right? So I was working with a district today that they were in person, but they had a little bit of an outbreak. So they are on a 2-week quarantine. So they had to shift back to remote. So making that mind shift to, hey, I finally got back in the classroom and now I have to shift back to virtual teaching and learning. What does that look like? Great idea. Awesome. So one of the great things is we can write all around this space with our students, but when I hit play, it's going to expand and take up the whole screen so that my students will be able to see it nice and large on my big IFP. They'll be able to see the video really play and start for them, which is really great. So we can watch the video. When I'm done watching the video, what I can do is X out, and it takes me back to the smaller version. So we could continue to add on. I could say, hey, what were some power words you heard, or some power phrases that you heard during the video? And my students could help me brainstorm and continue to add around this space here. So it allows you to add that YouTube video. There was no ads, no commenting. It doesn't take us to YouTube, which I love. It keeps me in this whiteboard space. Any questions or anything that we need to cover, Sarah, before I continue?
Let's see here. Just a couple of questions are kind of popping up. First, there are lots of questions about using Zoom on the board. And I think maybe after Casey kind of wraps up what she's doing in this session, we can spend a few minutes discussing using Zoom and the board and how we're doing this right now, because that question is coming up. So I do want to let everyone know we can address that, but we'll have Casey continue to show us this great example here that she's showing us.
Zoom is relatively new to our board, so we were super excited. This is the first time I'm doing it live with you guys, and we really love it too. So I totally understand the questions being asked. So we'll make sure we talk about that at the end for anyone who's interested.
Yep. And then also a quick question, when we did show the video, so Casey showed the video and we didn't hear the sound right away. And that's just kind of how we're all connected with everything. But when your students are in the classroom and you play that audio, they will hear that audio of the video.
Right. I have my board muted because I have my phone videoing and I have my computer on. So we have the sound on the IFP muted so as to not to have lots of sound competing with each other. But if I did not have my board muted, you would be able to hear the sound. Your students would be able to hear the sound as well.
And then just one or two more questions that are popping up about, after we're done with the session today and after Casey's done building her lesson, Casey, are you able to save this whiteboard lesson and maybe email it out? Is there a way to do that?
So the lesson, which is really great, it saves automatically. So every time I pick up my pen and make any changes to it, it's automatically saving. I don't have to tell it to save. And I can pull this lesson back up tomorrow, the next day, the next week, and we can continue to add to it, continue to erase, adjust, whatever we need to do. If you have a Smart Learning Suite account, this lesson is also tied to my Smart account. So as a Smart Learning Suite online lesson, I can access it on any web browser, on any device that has a web browser as well. So I can have my students participate using their device, their individual student devices. I, as a teacher, can access this lesson on my Chromebook, on an iPad, even my phone, if I were to want to do that as well. So because it's connected with my Smart account, it allows me to do a lot of different things with this whiteboard space. All right, so let's move along. One of the other things I wanted to point out, one of my very, very, very favorite things that's relatively new to the board. So let's go back to our left side, our toolbar. Basically, everything you need is on your left side. So one of the things I really encourage teachers to do when they have this board is to be a button pusher. Push those buttons, see what happens. That's a really cool thing to do, and you're gonna just make some really neat discoveries. So on the left side over here, I have, remember, right at the bottom, I have my up and down arrow, which allows me to move from one page to the other. Right above my up arrow is that plus button where I added a second blank page to my whiteboard space. When I hit that plus button, I want you to notice something else that we have access to. We have access to ready-made activities that are already built for you. So if you need a Venn diagram, it's already here. You don't have to build it. So one of the things I always had to do in the classroom is think, oh, I'm going to do a Venn diagram today. I have to make sure it's built on either my chart paper, on my smart board, or in my smart notebook, wherever I was going to use it. Here, I just have it. I just touch it and it's here and ready for me to use. All of these are customizable too, so you can add whatever, use it in any way that makes sense for your lesson, for your class. So if I were to want to do some brainstorming, notice I have this brainstorming web. All I do is touch it. And here I have my brainstorm web right here ready for me to go. So I can pick up my pen and begin writing immediately. I could have my students come and write on the board. I can have, if I'm having to think about social distancing, I could have one recorder up here recording what their peers are saying in a small group or a station of some sort. And I can pull this in anytime that I want to use it. Whether I'm watching a video, whether we're dissecting or doing a character analysis, whatever it is, I can pull this stuff in. If I want to do ways to make 100 and have my kids come and put some different ideas as they come in the morning, I can do that as well. One of the things I haven't showcased, that's another new feature that I love, 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 is going down our same left side. Remember, I said this is the magic. The magic's over here in this black bar on the left side. We talked about the pen tool. We talked about the mountain with the plus. Right underneath there, you see a little icon with 3 squares and like a kind of diamond, or I can touch that, and these have all of my widgets. So timers, dice, spinners, all of those different types of things that I can use with my lessons. So if I want to use a spinner, I can touch it and I can personalize these spinners so that I can use them with specific lessons. So I can make a dice have word families, for instance, and onsets, so my students could roll them and build words as a center or station. Can do a lot of things with these dice. So this spinner went on the center of my page for me. And you're going to notice that I have some words here that I have already started to customize my spinner. I'm going to add and fill in that last space over here. So I'm going to touch right below my spinner. Notice it kind of blurs out and you see a blue circle with a down arrow in the top corner. When I touch that, I have some options. I can delete, I can save this, and I can go to settings, which allows me to customize it. So I'm going to choose settings, and I'm going to move this up a little bit so I can add a word. So here I'm going to add, let's do friends. Okay. There, let me delete it. All right. There we go. So now I have it back in as a spinner, and it works just like you would expect to do. When I hit the play button, it's going to spin for me. So I can say to my kids, hey, I want you guys to think about a time you've shown grit in these different situations. So I can have a student come spin, or I can spin. And I can say, okay, I want you to share a time, put in the chat a time you've shown grit in a friendship situation. I know that my daughter showed grit in a friendship situation when she was really stood up in the way that a friend was treating her. She didn't like some of the things that she was saying, and instead of just ignoring them, after a while, she really got that bravery and got that strength to say, hey, I really don't like when you talk to me that way. So the confronting like a bully, or not necessarily in my daughter's case, it wasn't really someone being a bully so much as just having the conversation, the honest conversation of, I don't really like how you're talking to me. Any other ideas in the chat, Sarah, about a time you showed grit in a friendship situation?
I'm checking in the chat right now to see if anyone has a great example of how you might use grit and with a friendship situation. What's something, we think about our students, maybe if they're, I'm thinking maybe students, if they are maybe going to a new school, or now that maybe if your students have, different, classroom situations, they might be at home, they might be in the classroom, maybe help, if there's poor weather, how would you, kind of get through maybe a situation where it's, disappointing weather, maybe reaching out to friends during the pandemic, things like that.
Absolutely. Or I think with hobbies, think about like learning something first, with sports. I know for my son, he's really focused on really improving his batting average. So he's working on that all the time. He's coming home and practicing every day on his own because he's really determined, and he's showing that tenacity to really improve on that. Did you have something to add, Sarah?
Oh yeah, one more idea that popped up in the chat here is maybe working through differences or accepting individuality of others. Love that example.
I love it. Yeah, that's a great example. So you can see that I can easily have that spinner going. We can interact with the students. We can continue to add to our space here as well. You guys, we're doing that obviously in a remote setting right now, so you can see what this would feel like and look like if you did this with your students, if you're in your classroom, but your students are at home, or if you have a combination of things as well. So I want to show one other thing about the whiteboard space, and then before I know we're kind of closing up on our time. So if you look down on this left side, that same plus button that we have over here, one of the things I didn't point out, under graphic organizers, you see a green rectangle that says manipulatives. If I touch manipulatives, you're going to see that we have some ready-made manipulatives for you to use with your students. So if you want to have an interactive calendar, it's here ready for you to go. You don't have to create one. Or if you want to work on fraction tiles, it's here, or base 10 blocks. They're here for you to use as well. Or let's say math expressions. I can pull this out. Notice I have a dice here, so I can have my students roll the dice. And they can see, okay, I need 3 here. I have these infinitely cloned objects that I can use. I can roll the dice again. Maybe I'm adding today. And now I'm going to add 2. So you can see you can build and use these manipulatives with your kids on the fly really quickly as well, whether it's a center or a station, or whether you're trying to model something for your kids too. And there's a variety to choose from. So I'm going to hit the home button. And the last thing I wanted to point out is when I'm on my home screen, look on the left side, we still have, your left side is always going to have some extra goodies, right? At the top is where I can see that I'm signed into the board. I see my little picture to let me know I'm signed in. About halfway down, you see that same widget icon we saw in Whiteboard. But when I touch this icon, these widgets will float over any tool I have open or even just on my home screen. So if I want to use a 10-minute timer with my kids to help them know when their time is finished or how much time they have, I can pull in that timer and maybe, there we go. It'll start to play and work for us. And you can customize and have a variety of timers. Let me pull this one up because this one's, there we go. So I can have this timer, I can hit play, and it's going to be start the timing. I can move it. I can have it open even when I have a web browser open. If I have the smartboard open, that timer's always there to help us track whether we're doing center stations, whether I'm just trying to keep track of my own time. I'm notorious for telling my kids we have 3 minutes for something and like 8 minutes later, we're still working. So having that timer is really nice accountability piece. And you can get rid of it and throw it away if you don't want it as well, or move it around, delete it too. So that's a nice tool that you can have. All right. Oops. There we go.
All right. So we do have a couple more questions coming up in the chat that we can just kind of answer with the group if now's a good time, Casey.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right. So let's see here. A question about, are there going to be some more graphic organizers and things coming to Smart Learning Suite Online, maybe for older students?
Great question. So I think one of the great things about Smart Learning Suite Online is it is cloud-based. So it allows our product developers to continue to put their creative hats on and keep thinking about ways that we can support all students in all different areas. So absolutely, there's always things that we're looking at. They have a long roadmap of all of these master plans. I know Sarah and I are very excited about a few things that we know are on the horizon. So we're really excited. But yes, it's something that as opposed to Smart Notebook, for instance, where you kind of have 2 big releases during the year, with Smart Learning Suite Online, we can push some things out smaller or bigger as time moves on.
All right, so another question that's popped up is about the widgets. So we're seeing that we can use the widgets on the board. This is one of the newer updates. That question came out too, that widgets are a newer update to the board. You can also use widgets if you have Smart Notebook on your computer and you've connected your computer to your smartboard. But Casey, are widgets available in SLSO at this time?
Not yet. Hopefully soon. We're all begging for them, right, Sarah? That's something we're all asking for because we love. I know I use the dice in so many different ways. Whether I'm teaching language arts or math, I use them for exit tickets. I'm using them for character development. I use them for projects, all sorts of things. So we're all anxious and hoping that we'll see those widgets go live in Smart Learning Suite Online, just like they're live in Notebook and on IQ.
Yep. And then, okay, so our next question in here, let's see, about some of the manipulatives. Okay, I know Casey showed us how to customize the widgets and how to add different text to them. But are you able to customize the colors of the widgets when you're using the board?
So no, I don't think you can color, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but I don't think we can customize the color of the widgets right now. I think they are set to what they are.
Yep. And then as far as some of the graphic organizers or some of the manipulatives, if you're interested in making your own manipulatives, you can create your own lessons using Smart Learning Suite Online or SLSO. And we'll be sure there's a lot of questions popping up as we're kind of going through and we're clarifying, we're right now just using the smart, we're saying the interactive flat panel, the newer smart boards kind of looks like a smart TV, right? I know that has kind of popped up in the chat. But you can also use Smart Learning Suite Online to do a lot of these different ways to connect your students to these lessons and then also to build lessons. So right at the end, we are going to share some of those resources with you so you can explore more about Smart Learning Suite Online. Now, Casey, as we kind of get into that, could you show us again, how would I connect my students to my whiteboard lesson? If you want to show us how to do that.
Absolutely. I'm going to open my whiteboard lesson right now. So one of the nice things, as Sarah mentioned, is if you have it with the board now, if you have a smart account, so you are using Smart Learning Suite online, we can actually have our students, we can build, our lessons are, because they're connected to our smart account, whether I'm building on the board or whether I'm building through SLSO, they're now syncing as one lesson. So if you look for me on the top, on this left side again, so that same toolbar, at the very top, you should see a little picture of me. And right below there, we see two kids or two people with a number 0 next to it. When I touch that, you will see that I have the ability to start sharing my lesson. So I could have students go to hellosmart.com. They could either sign in with their account or just join me as a guest, and they can enter my class ID 11311, and they'll actually be pulled into my lesson on their device. And I can make sure that they can either view what I'm doing or they can actually actively participate. And all I do on my end is I hit start sharing. And so anyone that was in my lesson, they would start to see my lesson pull up for them to participate in and actively work with me on some of those things. So if I had a graphic organizer in here, my students could actually write on it and work on it from their device and not just watch me do it on the board. Other questions, Sarah?
I'm popping back into the chat here. We've been have such a busy session here. This is awesome. Everyone's been really participating just a ton, which is so fantastic. A couple questions about sharing SLSO lessons with students through Google Classroom. So I'm going to grab some resources to share with everyone kind of as we're winding down here on our time. And we do have a specific resource to show you how to use Smart Learning Suite online with your Google Classroom. And we're also going to share with you, we do have lots of upcoming webinars, and we also, so that you can learn more about using Smart Learning Suite online. So I'm going to start popping some of those resources here in the chat for everyone. And if you'd like to hang out with us and ask a few more questions, you're more than welcome to do that. I'm popping the first link into the chat here is, it'll take you to some resources to follow up on our session today, but also resources to learn more about SLSO or Smart Learning Suite online if you're interested in learning more there. The next link I'm going to pop in here into the chat is the link to learn more about some other webinars that we have going on, since we're all excited to learn more about SLSO. So you're more than welcome to check out our upcoming webinars.
We have them weekly, and they cover, most of our webinars are actually focused on Smart Learning Suite online. This is one of the few that we have that's focused on the board itself. So if you pop into any of our additional webinars, you're going to get to really deep dive some of that Smart Learning Suite online, which again, you don't have to have this board or even a similar board. You can use any web browser, so you can start those lessons, build those lessons, and share those lessons as long as you have internet and a web browser. That's all you need.
Awesome. All right, let's see here, popping in, and just some great suggestions in the chat about, having different characters or templates for the games, things like that, maybe for older students. So these are definitely some awesome suggestions. So thank you all.
You know what we also, hopefully, I don't know if you can find it quickly, Sarah, is the ability that you guys really have a voice. They want to hear from you on how they can change and develop the Smart Learning Suite online and the board itself also. So your great ideas are so welcome. So if Sarah can find it, she can put in a little web link where you can put specific ideas for those graphic organizers or for those manipulatives for our older students or anything along those lines. That'd be great for you to share your ideas or vote on other people's ideas, because you guys are really the driving force. Sarah and I are always talking about what we want to see happen, but we're two voices. You guys are a much louder voice.
Awesome. Yeah, so I did just pop that into the chat. So great suggestion, Casey. So if you'd like to head on over to that last link that I just popped in the chat, if you have any suggestions there. Let's Casey, I'm going to pop in another link in the chat here so that you can actually provide us with some direct feedback on our session today. We are always just so appreciative of any feedback you have after our session today. All right, so I'm going to pop that in here, and then Casey and I can definitely hang on for a little bit more time. I know there's a couple of other questions that have popped up here, and I'm going to check in with the Q&A again, but
and I know some people want to know about the Zoom, so we can show that at the end too, but we can answer some questions and then we can show the Zoom, but just let me know what we want to cover.
Awesome. Do you know what, Casey? One thing that's coming up here, now, I know we talked a little bit about having students connect to hellosmart.com. Do you think you'd be able to pull that up on the board to show us what that looks like when students go to hellosmart.com?
Sure, of course, I'd be happy to. Let me, so I wonder if I can connect and be both places. I'm sharing. So let's go. I'm going to hit the home button. Okay, and so remember we have on our board underneath the whiteboard space, we have a web browser. So I'm going to choose the web browser. And up here in the address bar, I'm actually might need to make sure I need to sign out if I'm signed in. Let me just see what's going to come up. Let's see, I'm going to try and go straight to, all right, let's pull up my keyboard. There we go. So I'm going to go to hellosmart.com. And so what your students will see when they go to hellosmart.com, if I can, there we go, get rid of the, okay. So what you're gonna see, what your students are gonna see is they're gonna see the first time a window that looks like this. And they have an option as a student to sign in with either their email credentials for their school, or they can join as a guest. For the most part, Sarah and I really encourage you guys to have your kids sign in. It's just best practice, even for our little ones. I taught kindergarten for a long time, so I know there's a lot of tears in getting kids signed in, mostly by the teachers. But it's good for them to learn, especially in today's world, to get signed in. Once the students get signed in once on their device, it will remember them. But the benefit of signing in to HelloSmart is if a student were to accidentally close their tab, or if they were to have internet issues, or if they were to have their device die or something like that, when they go back to the lesson, if they're signed in, it will take them right back to the work that they've done. So usually I would have students sign in. Today I'm going to choose join as guest. And when you join as guest, it's going to ask you to enter a class ID. So each teacher has their own class ID. It does not change. So my class ID is 11-3-11. So I'm going to hit go. Then it asks you to enter your name. Now, if your students were signed in, it would do that process for them. And again, it will remember you once you're connected. So once I'm signed in, it's going to open my teacher's lesson. It might be having some problems with me because let's sign in with a different account. So you're going to get to see the sign-in process as well. Let's see, maybe if I can get this to delete. There we go. All right, let me use a different account right quick. I was signed in earlier with my account, so it's going to be thinking that I should still be using that account. So I will change it. So your students, if you had them do as guests, you wouldn't go through this extra step. Oops, I'm doing the wrong. Well, let's see. I don't think it's going to let me do it because I just accidentally did it at the same address I just did. But we'll see. I think it's going to open as a teacher. Sorry about that, guys. But basically, that's the process. And as soon as you access, as soon as you go to that lesson, it's going to open. See, it's confused because it says, "Hey, you're not supposed to be building." So let me sign out and actually join in the right way. Student sign in, signing with different account. This time I will do the right one. Let's see. Oh man, sorry guys, I can't because I keep pushing the button and it keeps sending me back to the same place. So I don't want to spend time going back and forth, but it's pretty simple. And like I said, Sarah's put a lot of different links in there to help you kind of see what your students would see. And any of our webinars walk us through both this. We usually walk through the student experience first, so you can see that before jumping into the teacher experience.
So I'll loop back to one question that came up earlier that we haven't quite gotten to, kind of thinking about Smart Learning Suite in comparison to Nearpod. That came up in the chat. Casey, I don't know if you want to speak to that question.
Both great tools.
It's asking if they're comparable.
Yeah, there's some similarity. There's with all tools, right? There's some similarities. I've used both Nearpod and I used Smart Learning Suite Online in the past, along with a variety of other tools, right? You want to find the right tool for the right situation, for the right lesson. For me, I know that I work here, but I do like a lot of things that Smart Learning Suite Online has to offer. The variety of game-based learning that they have and how quickly you can add it. I like the ready-made activities that I can layer in with my own content. So Smart Learning Suite Online, similar to Nearpod, does allow you to access your Google Slides, your Google Docs, your PDFs, but I can layer in all of those extra features as well, like the ready-made manipulatives. The other thing that I really love about Smart Learning Suite Online is we can infinitely clone objects, which I think is really a huge piece of learning right now for our students. I can't send manipulatives home with kids that are working from home. And even those kids in class thinking about germs and keeping kids safe, handing out manipulatives is not as easy as it once was, right? So I can make pattern blocks. I can make algebra tiles for my kids and they can use them digitally through Smart Learning Suite Online because I can leverage my PDF, and then right on top of that PDF, I can layer in those algebra tiles and infinitely clone them so my kids can be using them to manipulate them, or Unifix cubes for my younger kids, pattern blocks for my students as well. I can layer all those pieces in through Smart Learning Suite Online.
Great. And then a question, kind of a follow-up question from there, and maybe you spoke a little bit to this, Casey, but then how do I see my students' responses when they're interacting with a Smart Learning Suite Online lesson?
So the really great thing is when you have your students connected to your lesson, what it's going to do is it's actually going to make, depending, you have an option. So let me pull up my lesson right quick, or this is my browser. Let me pull up my lesson. Here, let's pull this one up. So when I pull up this lesson, if I start this lesson for my students, one of the things you'll see in just a moment is, so right up here, if I start my lesson, and someone's actually welcome to join me. If you want to get that student experience, I'm going to add a graphic organizer right quick.
And I'll just highlight what Casey did there, because that question came up too. What Casey did was click on that little person with the number, and then she was able to pop up her class ID to share that with her students.
Right, exactly. So if you guys, I'm going to hit start sharing. And if you guys want to, if some of you want to open a web browser on your device and go to hellosmart.com, you might be able, I might need to sign out of my other space. And Sarah can add the code in, Sarah can add the code inside of my account. Inside the chat. So I'm going to sign out here because I think it's confusing it. There we go. And let me come back here to my lesson I had open. Make sure there we go. Now I'm going to come back here and let it think for a second. Let's see if we can get going. I think I confused everything when I went to, when I did it through the other board. I may need to go back through there. Well, we'll do it that way. Look at the magic. We're just going to switch. Oops. We're going to switch really quickly to the browser. Maybe I need to stop being so happy to click. I'm going to do teacher sign in. This time I'm going to sign in with my account as a teacher, and I will be able to show you guys what that student experience would be like. And it would work both, but for some reason, because I was signing in and I confused the board, it's like, wait a minute, who are you? Are you supposed to be a student or a teacher? I'm really confused. I actually opened the web browser. That's another way I can get to my Smart Learning Suite Online lessons. I don't have to go through the web browser though. I can access them. I can turn those whiteboard spaces straight into that browser. So now it's just doing its thinking. So notice I have graphic organizers right here, just like I have manipulatives from the board. So I'm gonna just add that same brainstorming web really quickly, and we will share it so you can see that. So right now what's gonna happen is I'm gonna go into editing mode. You'll know you're in editing mode because you have that blue bar across the top. In just a second, it's going to pull in my browser. Excuse me. So notice right here, I have the ability to add text and images here, and right below, I can convert this into an activity. Right now, it is set to be a just view only by the teacher, but I can convert it right now, or I can convert it in real time. I'm going to convert this. Let's see, we're going to talk about something new you learned. We'll add, oops, there we go. Sorry. So we'll just type in new. I'm going to type in new. So you're going to share something new that you learned today in just a minute. I'm going to convert this into a handout where each of you get your own copy. It's going to automatically save for me, so I do not have to save. It's just going to know to do that. And now I'm going to hit finish editing. Okay, so those of you guys can go to hellosmart.com. I'm going to pop it out right here. Those same people, go to hellosmart.com and you can join as a guest. You can enter my class ID 11311, and that will pull you in. And you're going to notice that you have the word start on your screen. Go ahead and hit the word start, and you'll see some tools on the left side of your toolbar, the left side of your screen. You have an A. If you touch that A and then touch anywhere on your screen, you can begin typing and moving your text to all the different circles. So I want you just to share some new things you learned or things you want to try today. So I'm seeing some people get connected. Sarah will add that to the chat. Notice as a teacher, I have student progress. So I can click student progress. And what I'm going to see is I'm going to see all of my students that have hit start and are in my class. I'm going to see them here. And I can actually open and see what they're working on in real time. So if I want to check in on Amy, I can touch Amy's screen. And it's going to pull up her. I see that Amy hasn't added any yet. Oh, now she is. She's coming to it. The fact that I have it up here for her to see is causing her to check in and want to share her ideas. So I can also give her some feedback in real time too. So I can come in here and I can put a little check mark on hers, and Amy's going to see that the teacher wrote on her page and gave her some feedback. She can also, and you guys can too, you'll see that same mountain that I was talking about earlier on IQ. You can do a being safe search for images that have Creative Commons license and are free for our students to use. You can also touch the A and then touch anywhere on your screen to start typing as well and share your ideas, and then you can move them into any circle. I can continue to pop in and look at different students and see what they're up to. Russell says he's done. Let's see if we, oh, Russell, you have a good start, but we're missing some things. So I could even give him some feedback. Hey, I want 3 more ideas. So I could say 3 more ideas. And he would see that as well. I'm not writing very nicely, but you get the idea. So I can add to that content and we can keep moving on. So when I want to, if I want to refer to this later, I can just pull this same lesson up, open this lesson at any time, and their work is saved. My students can come back to this activity any well. So if they want to continue working on it after class or for homework or use it to review for an assessment, they can open it as well. We can put it on Google Classroom or any learning management system.
And one more quick question since we're here. Is there a way for all the students to write on one space together?
Absolutely. So I'll model that for you guys too. Now look down the left side. Remember that plus button we had right above the arrow? We have it here as well. So when I click that plus button, one of my options is a whiteboard space. So I'm just going to grab that really quickly so I can model for you guys how we can use this as a space for all of our students to write on. Now, currently, if I write on it. I'm going to come over here. Let's say I want to know what I want students to share any questions they might have about their learning. I can put a question mark there for my student, and I can convert this page in real time so my students can work on it. If you look on that same left side where my people are, when I people, notice I have two choices. I have individual handout, which means each kid gets their own copy, like the brainstorm we just did, or I have collaborative workspace where I can put you guys into teams, or I could even put everyone in the same space. We're going to go crazy and put everyone in the same space. So I'm going to hit collaborative workspace. And so right now that's going to convert for me and give me some directions as a teacher. And it's going to tell you, hey, it's waiting for the teacher to start this lesson. So right here, I'm going to put everyone on the same team. And now you guys have those same tools. As you guys begin writing, we'll see your text coming in as well. The other great thing is I can actually touch and see who's sharing what content as a teacher too. So let me see if I can touch someone's work. Doesn't want me to touch. Oh, it's trying to think I'm a pin. Well, let's try it again. All right, so if I touch someone's response, I should be able to see, oh, Karam added the 2 + 3. I can come and see and touch and see who added our happy face. Our happy face was added by Amy. So if you click on an object and click the down arrow, you can see who's contributing what content. I love Workspaces. It's one of my favorite tools. I use it in so many different ways. Any other questions, Sarah, or things you want to address?
So there was a question about allowing students to work kind of at their own pace. So if I'm using those individual handouts, students can work during this live lesson with Casey, or they can work at any time. I can share out this lesson using my learning management system. Whole group workspaces work very well during in lessons or live lessons. We're all collaborating together. And then also if I use a collaborative workspace with small groups, if I set up those small groups during my live lesson, students can continue working at their own pace. And then I'll check the chat here. I think we got through a lot of those questions, except I know we kind of wanted to loop back to the Zoom question.
Before we go to Zoom, I'll just show you guys one other thing. On the left side, when we hit those people, one of the things you'll see is we have teacher pacing and student pacing. So right now we're set to teacher pacing, which means I move, you move. I can turn this over to you guys. And so now my students, you will get a message on your screen that allows you to use those arrows to move through the lesson at your own personal pace. And like Sarah said, if you share a lesson on a learning management system, those are automatically set to student pace. So you could put your students into small groups, things like that. All right, so are we ready to jump into show them where Zoom lives on the board, Sarah? Or is there anything else I need to address here?
Yeah, so I'm going to add the resources again to the chat, and those resources will give you some more information on how students could continue working on their own, how you could create that student share link, so that if that's something that you want to be able to try with students, you can do that. I'm going to go grab those resource links again.
And Sarah will put both of our emails in the chat for you to reach out to us as well with any questions that you guys might have. We can make sure we can continue to get those resources to you or help connect you with other webinars that you might enjoy as well. All right, so I'm going to talk about the Zoom app. It's basically an app that we have on the board that you have access to. So I'm going to hit my home button so I go back to my home screen. One of the things I didn't really talk about earlier is at the very bottom of your screen, look below my recents. You're going to see that we have 3 different circles. The first circle says files. This is where all of my work is saved automatically. So you were asking, someone was asking earlier, hey, would that whiteboard space be saved? Could I pull it back up? The answer is yes. If I hit files, everything's here for my students for me to access and use, and my students as well. The button right next to the Files button is the Apps button. So when I click on Apps, it's going to take me where I have some apps that are already loaded, like the browser. There's a calculator right there. Then I have some personal ones that I've added. So I added Zoom because I wanted to use it with my board and with you guys. If you don't have Zoom here, you'll notice that you have in the top corner a plus button that says Add. So when I click the plus button and choose Add, you're going to have some different options that open up. Under the Android options, you'll see Zoom as one of your choices. Now, Zoom for me has a green circle with a check mark because I've already added it to my app. But originally what you'll see is a download button, like a little arrow pointing down. So a square with a white arrow pointing down. So if I wanted to download this VLC player, I could do that. There's some additional tools too. So if I wanted to add Google Classroom, I can click this plus button right here, and I see now a green circle with that check to show that it is now in my app. So if I click back on my apps, you'll notice that I now have my Zoom. I also have that Google Classroom I just added, so it's right here. So once I have this downloaded into my apps, all I do is I touch Zoom and it opens up. You sign into your Zoom account. You're able to screen share. You're able to have your students connect. And then you get the same experience that I have right now, where they can actually see your school board on their computer.
Great.
Any questions about that,
yeah,
Sarah?
A couple other questions, because we have, if you're a Google Meet user, you can connect your computer to your board, to your smart board, and then use Google Meet with your board. That works nicely. Also, if you are using SLSO, as Smart Learning Suite Online, if you check out our resources, if you check out the Google Guide, that'll walk you through how to use Google Meet with SLSO or Smart Learning Suite Online. The question also came up about Teams. So Teams is integrated with SLSO app is available in Teams, which is amazing. We also had a webinar about that as well. So we'll kind of keep these webinars coming for you. I'll put that link in the chat one more time about our upcoming webinars. So let me pop this into the chat. So you're welcome to check out our upcoming webinars, and we'll have another series then starting. We have a few more webinars coming up. We have another series starting up again in January, as well as the recordings.
And Sarah, do we have
available?
That's right. So our recordings are available for, I know some of you, it works for me to be in an actual webinar so I can ask those questions and get that real time. But if you do want to take a peek to that Teams experience, for instance, and don't want to wait around for that webinar to come up, we do have those recordings for you to view and see as well.
All right, let me grab, I'll grab the link to the YouTube page where you can find some of these recordings as well. Let me just grab that link real quick for everyone.
For sure. I hope everyone's seen some ways that they can leverage both the board with their kids, whether they're remote, whether they're in class, whether you're doing some kind of crazy combination of the two, because that's the world we're living in right now. I hope that you've seen some tidbits about Smart Learning Suite Online that you can do with your kids too. I think it's a fantastic tool at all times, but it's especially helpful tool right now in the world that we're living in. It's a great way for your students to feel connected no matter where they are in the world. With that Workspace, for instance, if you have some students that are remotely learning and some students in your classroom, you can put those kids in teams together so they can build those relationships. So that when those kids that are home are ready to come back to school, they feel like they're part of that conversation the whole time.
Okay. Let's see here. I'll just kind of verbally answer some of these questions because we still have a couple more in the chat popping up here. Let's see. So just one more time to clarify that if you may have a smart board with an external projector, so one of the interactive whiteboards, so that you would need to connect your computer to. If you have one of these newer boards in your classroom with the Smart IQ, that's really what Casey was featuring for us today. But many of the things we showed you today, you can use Smart Learning Suite online. And even if you're teaching virtually, you can use Smart Learning Suite online. So be sure to check out some of those resources that we shared, or join us for a upcoming webinar. And there was one more quick question about students' work. Can you view students' work anonymously? So their names are attached when you are using the handouts or the workspaces, but you don't necessarily need to share your teacher screen if you're using handouts. You can just check students' work. There is another tool called Shout It Out, where you are able to see students' anonymous responses and then check their names later. So that is one choice for you. And let me see here. Just one more quick question about, are teachers able to work on a lesson together simultaneously? So at this point, teachers are not able to collaborate in Smart Learning Suite online. However, I might incorporate other teachers if I'm using a workspace so that they can work with students. Maybe if I have a teaching assistant with me, I would use that workspace tool to have multiple different people working on a lesson together. And then Casey's showing with us right now, this is how I could grab a teacher share link. So if you create a lesson for your students, you can easily share this lesson with another teacher for them to use with their class.
Yeah, so this top bar right here, we can share a share link with our teachers, and they'll get a copy of the lesson so they can make some adjustments to personalize it for their students. I know when I was teaching, even if we did the same lesson, we had to vary it based on, even though we have the same subject area, based on our personal dynamics of our classroom and our makeup of our students as well. So that way I can share, but then they can tweak as needed.
Okay, great. So I think at this point, we are going to, oh, wait, I have my Q&A real quick.
Okay, great.
And okay, so if I want to be able to save, let's see, save lessons, prepared lessons to present, I can save my lessons in my Smart Learning Suite online or my SLSO account. So a question about Zoom. So you do need to go into apps and then add the Zoom app to your board. So you can go right on into apps, as Casey's showing us right now. And you can just do that right from the board. You don't have to connect your computer to then download the app. You can just download the Zoom app right to your board. So great question. All right. And let's see, there's one more. Okay, all right, let me put in all the links again into the chat that we shared with everyone. Okay, so let me pop this into the chat just one more time. So I'll put in the resources link will be this first link that I'll pop into the chat for everyone. The next link I'm gonna pop into the chat is the survey link. Like we said, we would love if you have, it sounds like this group has some awesome ideas on ways to use SLSO, the smart board with your students. So we would love to get some more information about different ideas and things and all of your feedback. So I popped that feedback survey link into the chat as well, again, for everyone. And
you'll get a follow-up yeah, you'll get a follow-up email from us. So we'll make sure that, because I know it's hard sometimes in the chat to have lots of links, and I know Sarah was giving you a lot of good resources. So we'll make sure that we include those different links that she was sharing in the chat and in our follow-up email to you guys also, so that you have access to those there too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you, everyone, just for joining us today. It's just fantastic here. Let's see here. One more quick question. Sign in to see the link. So If you registered for the session today, you should be receiving that follow-up email. The links I popped into the chat, but I'll pop in my email just one more time here. If there is anything that you need after today or you don't get that follow-up email, please just reach out and we'll be sure to forward that along with you. But, please connect with us. We would love to learn more from you. I know, Casey, I'm always learning from teachers whenever we're meeting with them, whether it's with webinars or one-on-one. So, it's just absolutely fantastic. All these amazing ideas from everyone and all this great conversation that we had. Thank you all. And thanks for hanging out with us a little bit for a little bit longer than we had anticipated. This is just wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
So excited.
I know, it was super. It was like more people came to our party than we expected, which was awesome. No, so I'm so glad you guys joined us. We're very happy to work with you guys both.
So it sounds like maybe we lost audio there, but thank you again, everyone. We are going to go ahead and end this webinar, but like I said, please reach out after today with any questions that you have. We really look forward to hearing from you, and thanks again for having this awesome party with us, like Casey said. All right, have a good one, everyone.